Welcome to our channel. On this episode, we focused on the digital asset known as XRP. We gather videos and information from the web, and if you stick around, we are going to share it with you. So stay tuned for news and updates.
Affect relationships are by and large timeless. There's evolution. Evolution is how something changes over a period of time. And then around those things are these cycles, because if they're put in the same position, let's say a Federal Reserve is put into a position of having to decide, do you have defaults or do you print money? There's a choice, and that choice repeats over history. And so you can see what are the indicators of that position and what are the reactions and what are the choices. So the cause-effect relationships, by and large, remain the same through history. But there's always a reason. We're changing the world order, okay? In 1945, we started the New World Order. What I mean is, throughout history, there's a fight for control, because there's no world court that you go to and plead your case. And so there's a fight for power. So there's a war, and then the winners come out of that war, and the winners set the rules. And so, 1945, the United States had 80% of the world's money. Gold was money at the time. It had half the world's GDP. It had a monopoly on military power. So the U.S. set the world order. That's why the United Nations is in New York. Washington, D.C. has the IMF and the World Bank. And its currency became the reserve currency because of that set of circumstances. Things evolve. Things change over history. So the three big things that are changing now that haven't occurred in our lifetime is the amount of debt and money creation, which affects the value of money, and you could see it affecting what's going on every day. The large debt puts central bankers in a choice. Do you pay it back with hard money, or do you pay it back with printed devalued money? And if you pay it back with hard money, it's hard. In other words, that's when you have debt crises. So in all cases, they eventually print money, and that produces inflation. That's the place we are at this moment. Okay. The second is when there's a great internal conflict, usually when there's a large wealth and values gap, at the same time as you have a financial problem. Then you get populism of the left and populism of the right. In other words, those who feel disenfranchised want people who are going to fight for them. They don't want compromisers. They don't want them to be in the middle, because middle means that they're not fighting for them. They want them to have guts. So you have populists of the left, and their positions harden, and there are no compromises. That's why we're potentially in a situation that you could see in one of these elections, maybe in 2024, that neither side would accept losing. Perhaps we see that. Maybe you don't follow the rulings of the Supreme Court. Anyway, these things have not happened in our lifetime, but they happened many times in history. So if you look at that, you see from those patterns why the gaps become greater and the positions harden, and you see the dynamic. So that's the second. And the third is the rise of a great power to challenge the existing great power. In other words, I gave you the example of how the United States was so dominant in 1945. Now it's not as dominant. It is not dominant. In other words, China and the opposition is as strong as the United States and its allies. And so we have a conflict. And there are 5 kinds of wars, and they start in this order, just sequentially, typically. A trade war, a technology war, a geopolitical influence war. Then you get into a capital and economic warfare, which we are now with sanctions. They always happened in history. And then there's a military war. And so you could see that.
Now, Russia is looking to go on to its own gold standard. I think that speaks volumes. Any thoughts to that, Robert?
Yes, well, Andy Shechtman talks a lot about that. He talks about the BRICS. You know, the BRICS nations are Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And he talks about how the Belt and Road project now is going to affect 90% of the world's population. And
follow and like for this.
On the CBDC yuan. They'll be going into Chinese crypto, not American. So the US dollar, according to this guy Andy Shechtman, is toast. And that's why it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they're going to take over the world with their own gold standard.
This is something we've been focused on digital currencies for a couple decades. This is something we've been focused on digital currencies for a couple decades.
After thousands of years, during which humans were the rulers of the world, authority and power will shift away from humans to computers, and most humans will become economically useless and politically powerless. Already today, we are beginning to see the creation of a new class of humans, the useless class.
I would say if you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset. We need to get back to a place where supply and demand are back together, and where inflation is down low again, and mortgage rates are low again. So this will be a process whereby we do our work in a way where the housing market settles in a new place, and housing availability and credit availability are at appropriate levels.
Simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology, and I worry that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
We're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go, but clearly we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
This is not financial advice, and by any means you should not take any advice from us. We have no financial background. This channel is strictly fun base. So stay along for the ride, and if you like what you see, be free to like and subscribe.